I'm Anne Luke, the founder of the Early Learning Centre, along with a core group of parents who were really keen on doing something for their children, knowing that their children were not doing well in school and they entered the public or separate school system. So, and I was a teacher of kindergarten at the time in a city, Regina. And it bothered me a lot that there was such a gap. You know, if you were wealthy, you could afford to send your child to a Montessori program or preschool program. If you were working, you could access daycare services. But for mums who were caught between the cracks of those situations, there was nothing for their children. So that was kind of the reason, was to fill a gap, but not just to fill a gap with same old, but to do it differently and bring a new vision to what early childhood education could look like in the inner city in Regina. And one of the other things that I noticed was the racism, basically, that existed. It was patently obvious. And I thought, you know, it's true. I've been in Canada for 8 years when we started, and I had never been served by an Indigenous person in a store or a bank. So there were gaps, not just for the children's services, but gaps of visibility. Whatever we do has to take into account the need for true collaboration, not another top-down, I'm going to fix things, but a real partnership. And that was present from the very beginning. And I actually remember I had resigned my job as a kindergarten teacher before we broke up for the year. And I remember sitting in my back garden thinking, well, now you've got to get serious. You've given up your job. You better, get serious about this. And kind of sitting in the garden and planning what steps I might take and what were the fundamental values that had to be a part of it. So, and one of those was that parents are the first teacher of the children, so let's give them all the support they need. Children learn through experiential play and in traditional ways, the stories of elders, and that everybody has a voice. So we found a house, and one of the mums helped me clean it, and it was, like a bungalow, the main floor of a bungalow, over on, I think it was the corner of 6th Avenue in Elphinstone. And I went to lumber yards and asked for donations of bricks and planks of wood. So we made shelves. And then we had some little workshops. And, in my teacher style, I have like this big chart, what we're going to make, what the children will learn. These are the materials. And those moms were just amazing. They must have thought, crazy woman, but we'll humor her, So they came and they sewed little bean bags for, muscle development. And we made matching cards, pre-learning and pattern making things, basics of mathematics. And so I talked about what the children would learn from these things and what they could do. So right from the start, it was very collaborative with the parents, mostly single parents actually, and all of them were low income, and that became the criteria. Since there, as I said earlier, nothing in existence for low income families, that was the criteria. That lasted, and we started in September of '77. And by Christmas, we had a waiting list. So we decided to, when I say we, it's this small group of moms, we decided to do a full day, 2 half-day programs. But then I found it was pretty impossible for me to handle all of this. At first, I asked parents to come in and volunteer. And one of the parents, Muriel Lorat, was amazing. She just shone in terms of her capacity to organize and her support. And so in January of 78, we opened our doors again, and Muriel and I now were both each driving 5 children each. We had 10 children in each half-day program. And we managed quite well, but it was a little rushed. You structured the environment so the children feel invited to handle things. We had things like a deer antler on the science table, and one of the dads brought in, I'm trying to think what it was. I think it was a duck's wing. I forget exactly what it was, and that was on the science table, and it was really quite exciting. We had set up the main room of the house with puzzles, matching games, hoops and beanbags, those kind of things. That went on, and Fridays Muriel and I did home visits, and the purpose of that was to connect with the families and find out what their hopes and dreams were for their children, and then what that looked like in good early childhood practice. So it was sharing information, and parents could tell us, if we had a concern about a child who wasn't talking, and he talks lots at home. And I think it was in the second year that we got the services from Child and Youth of a social worker and a speech pathologist. So we were able to give those supports to parents if they needed them. One of the things that was really important to us was to honor and respect the culture of the children. And to that end, we had an elder who came in. He taught the staff Cree, and he did Cree with the children. At first, I had gone down to what was then the Cultural College at the university campus to see if there were any books or songs or rhymes that I could use in the work with the children, that all the staff could use. There wasn't anything at that time. So the person that was talking to me said, make them up. So I did. We had a little song, Tansei children, how are you, Namoyananto, I am fine. And we did that to the tune of Frere Jacques. And the children picked that up very quickly, and it was really lots of fun. And it always amazed me, there might be a child with a bit of a speech problem, but they could always get their tongues around those Cree words. It blew my mind. I had trouble getting my tongue around those words, and often the language, Cree, Amachif, whatever it was, wasn't spoken in the home, but it was spoken in the extended family. And so the children's ears were tuned to this. It was really quite wonderful. A suggestion had been made to me by a university professor that we might look at opening a kindergarten classroom as well. And that was tempting from the perspective of, well, does that mean more grant money for hiring teachers? But it became clear to me, especially as I read more about the early years and those critical years, and read Fraser Mustard and all those other people who were writing at the time about the importance of the early years. But I didn't see how it could be done until we were invited to join a national project. It was called the TLC project. And certain programs were selected across Canada to enhance the programs and to come together and learn from each other. And it seemed like that was the best time to look at doing something earlier than the preschool years. And again, when you think of services that are offered, you get help when you have your baby, you get help for a short period after that. But then there's that gap again where parents are alone and isolated, especially if they don't have extended family around them in the city, people who can support them. So we were able, through that TLC project, acquire enough money to train some staff in the Parents as Teachers program, which operates from pre-birth actually to 3. And again, the emphasis was on supporting the parents in their role, not telling them what to do, but offering suggestions and taking toys and books and things that could be left for a while in the home. I think one of the most exciting things that I recall about some of the things that were done with the parents was the literacy programs. We really, really wanted parents to have the experience of reading successfully to their children. And very often, they might have a book with lots of language and not really suitable for early years. So we had what we called a storytelling circle, and it was facilitated by Elaine, who was a volunteer here, and Lorna, who's still on staff here. And we started with everybody has a story to tell, because that was what we would hear. Oh, I don't have a story, or I can't read to my children, they get bored or whatever. So we started off at square one, everyone has a story to tell. And in that storytelling circle, people were encouraged to tell their stories. What was really neat about that, the stories that they wrote were so interesting that we decided to publish them. And I think there were a set of 7 books, 6 or 7 books. And, simple stories that could be read to the children. And so they were very moving as well. We had trouble finding someone to publish them, but we finally did. The Saskatoon Cultural College published them. And those who didn't want to illustrate their own, we had a person on staff, Cheryl Dieter, who was a great artist, and she also did the illustrations for some of them. We won an award. We won a national award for that. So it was kind of a highlight along the way, and it opened up again a place where parents could tell their story and frame it in such a way so they could tell it to their children. If we don't pay attention to everybody in the community, some will slide through the cracks. And yet we know from the research that has been done that if children get a good, solid experience, a respectful, creative experience in their early years, they'll do much better. They'll be better at making good decisions because they will have learned to make good choices, even if it's only whether you're going to use red and blue blocks or yellow and green blocks. They're making choices. We weren't educating children just to go to kindergarten and on, but they were learning life lessons, like making choices, being aware of our relationship with nature. We did a lot of going out and observing the environment and collecting leaves and representing their ideas in art and paint and clay and collage. One of the things, though, that I didn't mention when I talked about staff being collaborative, one of the ground rules, for want of a better term, is that we always try to have a person. We had a qualified teacher in each classroom and a teaching assistant, and that person had to be from the community served, if possible. And the relationship between the teacher and the assistant teacher was expected to be as respectful and as validating as the relationship with the families of the children. So it took a lot of work. It does take a lot of work for two adults to work as a team in a classroom. But it was really important for children to see role models. But I saw my responsibility was not just to seek and acquire funding for the programs, which had proven to be successful in various studies, but also to bring what we were doing, the ideas, the values, the philosophy of what we were doing to the wider community. But I believe that we had to be actively involved in educating the community about the issues.